right, let's get it in. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 9. We'll be dealing with the atonement. Anybody want to read? Oh, okay, we got another brother.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom.
Start at the top.
Yep, we're gonna rock this one all the way out.
All right.
Yep, whenever you're ready.
Then verily, Hebrews chapter 9, verse 1. Then verily the first covenant had also ordinances of divine service and a worldly sanctuary. For there was a tabernacle made, the first, wherein was the candlestick and the table and the showbread, which is called the sanctuary. And after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all.
So verse 3, after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all, is one you want to keep your mind on. Go ahead.
Is when what?
This is one you want to keep your mind on. Verse 3.
Okay. Which had the golden censer and the ark of the covenant overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the covenant.
So really quick, so we see in the ark, manna was present, right? Which was the bread, which is also Yahawashi. Go ahead.
And over it the cherubims of glory, shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. Now, when these things were thus ordained, the priest went always into the first tabernacle, accomplishing the service of Yahweh. But into the second went the high priest alone, once every year, not without blood, which he offered for himself and for the errors of the people.
So just to look at Hebrews 6 and 9, it's a contrast. It says, now when these things were thus ordained, the priest went always into the first tabernacle, accomplishing the service of God. But into the second tabernacle went the high priest alone, once every year, not without blood, which he'd offered for himself and for the errors of the people. So the first tabernacle you can look at as the Old Testament, right? Because you're accomplishing the services of God. But the second tabernacle is quote unquote New Testament or spiritual. You know what I mean? There's those, you did the laws and now you're going into the spirit, because the high priest alone went in. But this was once every year, not without blood. We'll see that as we go on.
Good.
Verse 8, the Holy Spirit, this signifying that the way into the holiest of all was not yet made manifest, while as the first tabernacle was yet standing, which was a figure for the time then present, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices that could not make him that did the service perfect, as pertaining to the conscience.
Right. So notice it's giving us the understanding of what's going on. The Holy Spirit signifying that the way into the holiest was not yet made manifest. So this is the time from Genesis all the way up to Malachi, all the way up to the Maccabees, right? The the way into the holiest was not yet made manifest while the first tabernacle was still standing. So in a sense, while quote unquote the old covenant was still going, that way of the holiest wasn't made manifest, right? And it was a figure of time to come, which in other verses says a shadow of things to come. Gift sacrifices that could not make him that did the service perfect, right? It couldn't make you perfect pertaining to the conscience, your mind. Even though we did the sacrifices, our minds didn't change, right? We still, oh man, committed another sin, then we had to do another sacrifice, another sin. Sort of the same thing now. Our mind isn't completely changed, but that's the whole point of this. It's working on the change of the mind and the spirit. Go ahead.
Verse 10, which stood only in meats and drinks and diverse washings and carnal ordinances imposed on them until the time of reformation.
Right. So this was only for a set time. We were supposed to be doing the meat, drink offerings, diverse washings, and carnal ordinances. Again, it's not to say not to practice them, but that was the point of them. They were for a certain time, right? Because there was no reformation yet, because the spiritual aspect wasn't taken yet, the physical portion had to be done because there was no real other way towards salvation. Go ahead.
Verse 11. But Christ, but Hamashiach, being come and high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us.
So this is what you get where they say Christ is the atonement, right? Because he only had to enter in one time for it, and it was an eternal redemption, right? So again, it says being a high priest of good things to come and a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, because the Most High does not dwell in things made with hands or buildings, right? So you can look at that as the flesh, neither by blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered into once the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us, right?
For if the blood of bulls and of goats and the ashes of an heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctifieth to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Hamashiach, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to Yahweh, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God?
And again, he keyed on it. Purge your conscience from dead works. And we always forget it's a mindset, not so much the actions, because you could do all the actions, but still have a worldly and very carnal mindset. You could still have a very angered or bittered mindset, but you're still doing the works, right? Because it's of the flesh. So he has to purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. Go ahead.
And for this cause, he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance.
Right. So he's the mediator of the new, let's call it Brit Hadashah, the new renewed testament, because it's not really new, it's renewed. Something has been taken away and something has been added in place. Or what's the word? What's the word when you switch something out?
Change, amended.
Change, yeah, along those lines. But so essentially something has been swapped, let's say that, right? So it's not really new, it's a renewed covenant. They use New Testament in English, but it's Brit Hadashah, it's a renewed testament. Go ahead.
Verse 16.
Oh, I'm sorry,
For
key. Inheritance. Go ahead.
receive the promise of eternal inheritance. For where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. For a testament is of force after men are dead. Otherwise, it is of no strength at all while the testator liveth. Whereupon neither the first testament was dedicated without blood.
And a modern explanation of that, right? Like we said, like I was pushing on inheritance, right? And it says, for where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. For the testament is of force after men are dead. Otherwise, it is no strength at all while the testator liveth. So in a modern sense, you want to look at this as a will. Oh, that's why they call it a will and testament. The will is no good while the person is living. It only goes into effect once the testator dies. So this is the same thing as saying, so that's why I said inheritance. So you can't get the inheritance unless the testator passes on. Go ahead.
Verse 19. For when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and of goats with water, and scarlet wool, and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book and all the people, saying, This is the blood of the testament which Yahweh hath enjoined unto you. Moreover, he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry. And almost all things are by the law purged with blood, and without shedding of blood is no remission.
Right.
It was therefore necessary that the patterns of things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these.
So the heavens had to be purified or renewed, but the heavens themselves have better sacrifices. They don't have carnal sacrifices like we do. So again, that goes to show what takes place in the spiritual realm also happens in the physical realm. Right? That's why it says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So while things are going on here, it's going on there. That's like when we read in Jubilees when it said they keep the Sabbath with us. We're not the only ones keeping the Sabbath. The heavens are keeping the Sabbath. Right? Go ahead.
Verse 24.
Mhm.
For Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but
Mhm.
into heaven itself, now
Right.
to appear in the presence of Yahweh for us.
So just to tell you, that's the Holy of Holies. Behind the veil is holy, but it's mimicking the heavens, right? The veil, right? The separation between the heavens and the earth. So he's not entered into the place made with hands, which are the figures of the true, which is an imitation or a likeness, but into heaven itself, now to appear into the presence of Yahweh for us. So, in the same sense, the high priest did that. That's how he's doing it. He's going into the heavens to present this versus being on earth. Okay, go ahead.
Nor yet that he should offer himself often, as the
Mhm.
high priest entereth into the holy place every year with blood of others.
Mhm.
For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But
Mhm.
now, once in the end of the world, hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself.
Mhm.
And as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment, so
Mhm.
Hamashiach was once offered to bear the sins of many, and
Mhm.
unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation.
So unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. So if you're not looking for him, it doesn't mean he's not coming, but he's not coming for you. Right. And that's why it says in the beginning, like for those that don't believe, they're condemned already. So he's going to appear the second time without sin unto salvation for those that are looking for him. That's why you hear the verses like "seek my face" early. Those that, and you know what is it? 2 Corinthians 7:14. Those that what
That
is
the
it? Those
Lord
that seek my
spiritual?
face. Uh, that's the Corinthians. I meant Chronicles.
Chronicles, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yes, yes. First
right,
Chronicles 7 and 14.
right, and that's why he's constantly talking about seeking his face. So if you're not seeking his face, or you're really, I mean, I can't say that because we don't know for sure, but essentially, or you're going to bear witness to his destruction, whereas those
Right.
that were looking for him will see their salvation. Right. Let's go to real quick, 2 Corinthians 3. I'm going to read from 12 to 18.
Okay, 1 second.
No problem.
Hebrew. Said, I'll go where?
2 Corinthians 3, verses 12 to the end.
12 to the end. Reading out of the book of 2 Corinthians, chapter 3 and verse 12.
Mhm.
Seeing then that we have such hope, we use great plainness of speech, and not as Moses, which put a veil over his face.
Salakia, I'm Salakia. Could you read a little bit louder?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Seeing then that we have such hope, we use great plainness of speech, and not as Moses, which put a veil over his face, that the children of Israel could not steadfastly look to the end of that which is abolished,
Mm-hmm.
but their minds were blinded. For
Right.
until this day remaineth the same veil untaken away in the reading of the Old Testament, which veil is done away in Christ.
So notice this. It says, so we're speaking in plain speech, not as Moses, which put the veil over his face, right? Which is a covering, right? So it gives you an idea because remember, Moses went up to the mountain to see the glory of the Lord. And then that then Moses being in his presence shone from receiving that light from the Lord. So when receiving, just to tell you, when receiving that light, actually, I'll go into that later. But basically, the veil is over his face, right? So the children of Israel could not steadfastly look to the end of that which was abolished. So they didn't know what was going to be abolished, but they couldn't look to it because Moses covered his face. So in other words, if he took on the essence of the Hamashiach, that would be what that would show you who was coming to abolish the things. But since he put the veil on, they couldn't look directly at him, right? Because he was also a reflection of his image. But notice what it says, but their minds were blinded. And we just read before, the whole thing was for the consciousness, right? Or until this day remaineth the same veil, untaken away in a reading of the Old Testament, which veil is now done away in Hamashiach. So in other words, so that veil is not just going forward, it's going backwards, because people of today can't see Hamashiach in the Old Testament, nor do they think they have to keep the laws of the Old Testament. And conversely, there's Old Testament people that can't see Christ and don't think there's anything after that testament. So that veil is not removed. Then that veil goes in both directions. Neither one can see on the other side of the veil. Right? We at 15?
15. But even unto this day, when Moses is read, the veil is upon their heart.
So if it's upon their heart, it means they truly don't want to see. Go ahead.
Nevertheless, when it shall turn to the Lord, the veil shall be taken away.
Now notice this. This is nevertheless, when it shall turn to the Lord, the veil shall be taken away. So what is that saying? When your consciousness changes and you apply the fruit to the spirit and all these things, then the veil is going to be taken away. Then you can actually look at it, and vice versa. When you take out the hardness of your heart from the churches and those who misled you, and you see Yahawashi for who he is, then you can see that you have to keep these laws and keep these holy days. So when your heart is truly turned to the Lord, there's no veil. There's no separation between the two. Old and new, rather. Go ahead, Sloppy.
Verse 17. Now the Lord is that spirit, and where the spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. But we all, with open face beholding, as in a glass, the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord.
So notice that, right? It says, but we all with open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image. So when you go back to verse 13, and not as Moses will put a veil over his face, that the children of Israel could not steadfastly look to the end. So when he was in the Lord's presence, he changed to the same spirit, not the Lord himself, but the same spirit. So this is what it's saying. So now it goes into, but we all, with open face beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord. So that's what happened when Moses was in his presence. He changed that, but he put the veil on because it wasn't time yet. All right, let me know when you're back in. You will give him a second before he comes back. Okay, Zechariah is having trouble getting in, I think.
Con, I'm working on it now.
Water. Let me check. Wait till he comes back in real quick.
Hey, hello?
Yep.
Hey, Sakar's trying to get in and he can't
Yeah,
get in.
yeah.
He just
He's on it. He's on it now.
all right.
Yeah. All right, we got that. Hold on one sec. Let me see if I want to go to the scripture. Okay. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 10. And we could start at verse 7.
Hebrews chapter 10.
Actually,
He's still not in.
no. What's that?
Sakar is still not in.
All right, I'll give it a minute.
I'm working on it. I'm trying to get him in.
All right. Give me a second.
Okay, now Mayan went out now.
Okay, Hebrews chapter 10 and verse.
Hold on, now Mayan's out now.
Okay.
She's
Could be
back. Yeah.
because she's out.
Oh, wait. Oh, no. Yeah, she's out.
I wonder, it could be a phone, and I think she's working.
Oh.
So I'll give it like a minute, and we'll just continue on since it's being recorded.
Con.
That's
No
it.
worries. This could be edited. So,
Yeah, true. Damn, do I really want to drop down to 7?
You want me to read fast?
Let's see. Hold on.
Yeah, if you let me know that you're not breaking it down, I'll read fast through it.
Yeah.
And then when
I
you're
mean,
gonna
I
start
may
breaking
break
it down.
down as the verses come up, but not necessarily going into too many precepts.
Okay.
Yeah, you can start from 1 and go to 27.
Okay, you let me know when you're ready.
uh,
And you said Hebrews 10, right?
yep.
Uh,
Yeah, you can go ahead for that.
Reading out of the book of Hebrews, chapter 10 and verse 1. For the law,
Mhm.
having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year by year continually make the comers thereunto perfect.
So that's the
For then,
exact same thing we just read in verse 9.
uh-huh. For then would they not have ceased to be offered, because that for then would they not have ceased to be offered, because that the worshippers once purged should have no more conscience of sins.
And key,
But in,
hold on. And and notice again, conscience of sins. And would it not cease to have to be offered? But a lot of Christians use this as an attack. See, the Old Testament, that's not what it's saying. It's saying the sacrifices were an issue. The sacrifices couldn't make us perfect. Go ahead.
but in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again made of sins every year. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and of goats should take away sins.
Mm-hmm.
Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he saith, Sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. In
Mm-hmm.
burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin thou hast had no pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Then said I, Lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written of me to do thy will, O Yahweh.
So notice this. He's saying, I come in the volume of the book. It is written of me to do thy will, O Yahweh. So as we see, if we keep reading, go through classes, we're going to see that he is literally throughout the entire book because he is the foreshadowing of what was to come. Go ahead.
Verse 8 above, when he said, Sacrifice and offering and burnt offerings and offerings for sin thou wouldest not, neither
Mm-hmm.
hadst pleasure therein, which are offered by the law.
Mm-hmm.
Then said he, Lo, I come to do thy will, O Yahweh. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second,
Mm-hmm.
by the which will we are sanctified, by the which will we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. And every priest standeth daily ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But
Mm-hmm.
this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of the Most High, from henceforth expecting till his enemies be made his footstool.
Mm-hmm.
For by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sanctified.
Right.
Where
Good.
whereof the Holy Spirit also is a witness to us. For after that he had said before, This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, saith the Most High, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds will I write them,
Mm-hmm.
and their sins and iniquities will I remember no more. Now, where remission of these is, there is no more offering for sin. Having therefore, brethren, boldness to enter into the holiest by the blood of Yahawashi, by a new and living way, which he hath consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say, his flesh, and having a high priest over the house of Yahweh. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water.
So hold on. So notice it's repeated again. Let us draw near with a true heart and full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled, which is reminiscent of sprinkling the mercy seat with the blood, from an evil conscience, and our bodies washed with pure water. So it's the mind. It's always cleansing the mind, which cleanses the spirit. Go ahead.
Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. And let us consider one another, to provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as ye see the day approaching.
So, you know, this is why, even though, this is why, even though, you know, we don't have a school as of yet, this is why we come together on the Zoom. This is why we try to have these meetings, because it says to do what? Don't forsake assembling, but it also says exhort one another, and much more as we see the day approaching, because the end is coming and we don't want to fall short on these behaviors. And these behaviors are the fruits of the spirit, exhorting one another, assembling ourselves, because as the day approaches and this thing actually takes place, we're not going to be able to do any of it. Right? Yeah, up to 27.
Okay. For if we sin willfully after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no sacrifice for sins, but a certain fearful looking for the judgment and fiery indignation which shall devour the adversaries.
So that just goes to tell you, if you willfully sin, like, you know what, I'm going to do this anyway, Yahawashi got me. After you receive the knowledge of the truth, there is no more sacrifice. All that blood is dried up. But then the only thing you have left is a certain fearful looking for judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversary. So at that point, if you're looking for that, you have become an adversary. Right? Let's go to Hebrews 6, and we're going to read 18 to 20.
Reading out of the book of Hebrews, chapter 6, verse 18. That by two immutable things, in which it was impossible for Yahweh to lie, we might have a strong consolation, who have fled for refuge to lay hold upon the hope set before us, which hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, and which entereth into that within the veil, whither the forerunner is for us entered, even Jesus, made an high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek.
So he's an anchor for the soul. So you know, with an anchor from a boat, it's dropped into the water and it holds the boat steady. Regardless to how the waves push and the winds push, the boat or the vessel is going nowhere. It is sure and steadfast. And that happened when he entered into the veil. He became the forerunner for us and a high priest. He's doing the acts of the atonement in the heavens, not on earth like the our high priest did. Let's go to, hold on, let me check. Let me see if I want to go to this one. Let me just check this. Okay, we'll finish with that one. Let's go to, now I want to show you something a little different, right? Let's go to the book of Exodus. Chapter 12, we're going to read 1 through 7. You don't have to read this fast because we're going to,
Okay.
hold up. Let me get with you. 12. Yeah, we're going to read verses 1 to 7. This one I'm going to precept because I want to show you something interesting.
Okay. Reading out of the book of Exodus, chapter 12, and verse 1. And the Most High spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you.
So we know this is Abib, right? The first month of the year where we do the Passover. And that's what we're reading into is the Passover. So that's the first month of the year. Go ahead.
And that's April.
Come.
Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house.
So notice this. Now, this is the first month. It's not the 10th month. But look what's occurring on the 10th day of the month. You take a lamb, every man in his house. When we were reading earlier in Hebrews 9 and 10 and 6 about the atonement, the lamb went into the veil for us on the 10th day. So you've seen a correlation between the lamb. Go ahead.
Verse 4, and if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your account for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats.
Right, so they have to be perfect, the male of the first year. Go ahead. Now, yeah, go ahead.
And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening.
So what do we notice here, right? So it's the month of Abib, or let's say April, because it can change to March too, depending. Right, the first month of the year. On the 10th day, right, is when we get the lamb. On the 14th day is when we kill it, right? Notice the time period, the 10th day to the 14th day. This also shows you when during the week he was killed. You understand? So when it came time for Passover, when Yahawashi was crucified, right? That lamb was presented on the 10th day. So now you count the 3 days up to 3 nights and 3 days up to the Sabbath. You're getting that whole thing to play out. Right? Verse 7.
Verse 7, and they shall take of the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and on the upper door posts of the houses wherein they shall eat it.
Right? It says, and they shall take of the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and the upper door posts of the houses wherein they shall eat. Read that one more time.
And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and on the upper doorpost of the houses wherein they shall eat it.
Go to Luke chapter 6 and verse 28 and 29.
Reading out of the book of Luke chapter 6 and verse 28. Bless them that curse you, and pray for them which despitefully use you. And unto him that smiteth thee on one cheek, offer also the other. And him that taketh away thy cloak, forbid not to take thy coat also.
So notice what he just said there. And unto him that smiteth thee on the one cheek, also offer also the other. Verse 7 in Exodus said, and you shall take the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts. The 2 side posts are the cheek. And on the upper doorpost of the houses. So he wasn't just telling us how to deal with people. He was also still fulfilling prophecy to be struck on both sides, which is also the covering of the blood on the door. And again, Yahawashi being from the tribe of Judah, which is the 4th tribe, which is the letter Dalet with his gate and doorway. He is that doorway. So he was struck on both sides. So he's telling you, if you're going to be like me, you're going to have to be able to be struck on both sides. Did you catch that, or did I go too far?
I'm processing. I ain't fronting.
All right.
I'm processing, but go ahead.
Cut. What was the other verses I pulled? Salakia.
I kind of thought you were going to connect the atonement. No. I'm not even going to say the guy.
No. This is just the atonement is connected with the lamb, but I was just giving you a little something extra before we roll.
No, I got you.
All right, so okay, so again, we read about the atonement, we read about the veil. So let's go to Matthew chapter 27, 50 to 51.
Reading out of the book of Matthew, chapter 27 and verse 50.
Mm-hmm.
Yahawashi, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent.
So this
And
is exactly when the veil was broken, when the veil was rent, right? The, what do I want to say? The veil or the block or the doorway to the communication between us and the Most High was opened from this point. From when he gave up that spirit, the veil of the temple was rented. Now access was given back to us to the Most High through Yahawashi to be able to speak to him. And they could play in his part as the mediator of that covenant. Let's go to
you said read from 50 to 59?
no 50 to 51.
Oh, all right, my bad.
No problem. Hold on, before I go there, let me just check. Oh, come on. Oh no, that's the same thing again. Let's go to the book of Romans 5 and 9. We're going to read to verse 11. Wait, hold on. Yeah, we can read to 14.
Reading out of the book of Romans, chapter 5 and verse 9.
Mm-hmm.
Much more then, being now justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him.
Mm-hmm.
For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to Yahweh by the death of his son, much more being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life.
And really quick, to reconcile is to make peaceable again, right? To make a good relationship again. Now, you cannot, this is, and again, this is not to the exclusion of other nations, but for what he was sent for, you can't reconcile a relationship that you never had. So the reconciliation is with the nation that he had. So this is why it's using reconciled and redeemed in those words, because it's being done over again. So this is why I said the New Testament is, in fact, Brit Hadashah, a renewed testament, because it's being done over again. Right? Go ahead.
Verse 11. And not only so, but we also joy in Yahweh through our Lord Jesus Christ, by whom we have now received the atonement. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. For until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed where there is no law.
Right. You can't be blamed, or blame can't be placed on you if there's no law. Go ahead.
Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over them that had not sinned after the similitude of Adam's transgression, who is the figure of him that was to come.
Right. So we see it says there that we receive the atonement through Yahawashi. So what does the word atonement mean? Right. It's literally a word that's compounded. It's at one ment, meaning of one mind, because ment is menti in Latin, one mind. It means of one mind and of one body. That's what atonement means. So when that veil was rent and that what separated us from the Most High was available, we all went back into one mind. And that was the purpose for the atonement, is that we can be of one mind with Yahawashi and Yahweh, and one mind and one body with the nation of Israel. I'm gonna end it there.
Con. Okay.
Yeah, I could have went into a lot more, but we're gonna keep that short.
Yeah, I see. He's whipping out the advanced classes tonight.
Not really. There was, you know what? I wrote these out and then I started reading it, and I was like, "There's 50 million other places I could go with this."
I'm sure.
But then there was that, not knocking it. That'd have been to like 11. Honestly, with this, I was like, "Oh my gosh, look at this verse! Look at this verse!" But yeah, flock it for those that came in late, but don't worry, it's recorded. Yeah. Again, I ended it there. So
That was very good. Very good.
But hopefully y'all got something out of it. If you didn't hear it, it's recorded. And y'all can tell us how it was for y'all, if you kept it, if you didn't keep it, or if you're going to keep it, or whatever the case is.
I just broke my fast like 20 minutes ago.
All right, all praises.
Yeah, I went a little past 24 hours.
Okay, cool.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I started, as you know, but I started mine actually before, started it like a day before. And yeah, I had a little bump along the road, but finished it out. Yeah, so
Right. Well, that's the whole key to everything is like, we want to do it, but this is what I wanted to say too. He pretty much secured the atonement. What we're doing is rehearsing the righteous acts. So what we're doing is showing our obedience. And and it was an ordinance given by the Most High that we had to keep forever throughout our generations.
right.
But we're not truly doing anything to make our salvation happen any better. We're just showing obedience to His law.
Right.
Rehearsing the righteous acts.
Mm-hmm.